exercise, but since y'all are eating, I'm gonna skip that. I want to thank y'all for your trust and support, those of you that send people to us.
Roseanne, are you gonna fix her up
I
so
am.
we can hear her a little
We're
bit better?
gonna ask you to hold it, just because it's one of those nights, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right.
If you want to, we can move put the microphone in front of the podium, if that will help.
Or if mics make you nervous, we can lead you in a breathing exercise.
Can we have the sergeant at arms remove this?
I do not know you well enough for this conversation.
Except by apology. Oh, man.
Okay, so,
All right.
thank you for your trust and support, and Robbie, thank you for inviting me.
You bet.
I have probably been more the beneficiary of this presentation than, they say when you teach, you get more than the people that are listening, and it certainly has been that way with me. Most of you received a letter from me in August, I'm hoping. It had some information, and when I was signing it, I thought to myself it would be nice to go and see each of you individually and to visit your church and to just ask questions, answer questions, however. And I looked forward to that, and then I thought, well, it can't be done. So now it's being done, but I didn't want all of you at the same time. It's pretty overwhelming to be in front of professional speakers. I mean, y'all craft every week, and I just admire the ability that you have to do that, because I do need a breathing exercise, John.
It's okay, most of us aren't good at it anyway.
I asked Dennis, I said, you got tips? And he says, yeah. He said, breathe and bend your knees. Let me give you a background about myself and some details about the Counseling Center. As Robbie was saying, the Counseling Center was started in 2003. I started in 2006 as a contract counselor. So I was in contract counseling for 3 years. And confidently, I can say that it was all orchestrated by God, because the way that it happened, I was kind of just a willing participant. In 2005, my husband and I took a job, or he took a job at a local bank here in Universal City. We've been living in Mission. I am from the Rio Grande Valley originally. I moved over here to go to Incarnate Word College. Met my husband, then we moved back to the Valley, which I swore I would never do. And so I was eager to get back to San Antonio, but I stayed behind, and he came on. He was here 6 months before I was. One day he called me, and it's not in his nature to manage my employment. Whatever, whoever, and he called me and he said, hey, I think Oakwood would be a good fit. So the only call I made was to Oakwood in trying to find a job as a counselor when we moved. I called Judy, we interviewed, and I started in January of 2006. Because I'm a CPA, or was a CPA, Judy, who didn't like numbers, asked me if I'd help with the financial aspects of the business. And so in doing that, I got to know how and what Judy did. So when she decided to retire, it felt natural to move into that. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it did feel natural. So I interviewed for the job as director. It was Pastor Ray Still, it was Roxy Van Story, and it was J.K. Minton. And J.K., I'd like to tell you now that he asked for my testimony, and it just made my heart sing that you asked for the testimony. And you commented on my testimony, and I have always felt that you are a part of Oakwood Counseling Center because of that.
Amen.
After I got the job, I was told that there was another candidate that was being looked at, and she didn't show up. So I didn't look for the job, I didn't ask for the job, and then the other one dropped out. So I really feel that the entire process was orchestrated by God, and it's a job that keeps me on my knees. The Counseling Center currently has 9 contract counselors. The counselors keep their own hours, they're independent, and they're not in the office every day. When we receive a request by phone, my assistant, Sharon, and incidentally, Sharon and I are the only ones that are employed by Oakwood. My assistant Sharon does an intake, and it's mostly demographics, and she asks them, what is your goal? What is your goal for this? She asks them when they're available, and then we, Sharon and I, staff them together. So everything goes through my desk, and then she calls the counselor then calls us back once the process is done. So at the point that the counselor takes it, we drop out of the communication as far as scheduling and rescheduling. Our counselors are all licensed by the state, and they're all vetted by me. I take their references, they are fingerprinted, I address the hard questions, and they receive a copy of Oakwood's core beliefs, which they have to sign agreement with. And if you're interested in those beliefs, they're on the website. Basically, we do not counsel contrary to our faith. So I would like to give you that assurance. If you hear otherwise, please let me know. I recommend all of them. They all have different strengths. Today, I'm here to talk about being emotionally healthy. My hope is to address burnout, depression, anxiety, boundaries, and all of them are common to pastors and to ministry leaders. Research shows that pastor burnout is on the rise, and I'm sure none of you are surprised by that. I'm really kind of encouraged that there's so many of you young men here. Barna shows that in 2017, 30% of the pastors admitted to having burnout or suffering from burnout. In 2019, it was 29%. In 2021, it went up to 38%. And currently, as of March 2022, the percentage of pastors who have considered putting full-time ministry within the past year sits at 42%. Y'all agree with that? I mean, does that sound? I verified it and verified it, so. And the top reasons are for clergy burnout or stress, loneliness, and political division. Y'all agree with that? Yeah. Pastors not only have to struggle with their own emotions, but also with the emotions of their church members, and to a sense, in a smaller sense, with those of the community. God calls pastors, God calls y'all to love even those within your church who are vocally disagreeing with you and causing conflict. Anglican priest Warren states, these past years required them, pastors, to make decisions they were not prepared for that affected the health and spiritual formation of their community. And any decision they made would likely mean that someone in the church would be hurt or feel marginalized. As I did my own research, I found some of the difficulties that accompanied, and these are very few, but they were the ones that came out the most, pastors during the pandemic. One of them was establishing a digital ministry. Second one was isolation. Third one was increased numbers of church members sick and dying. Fourth, division in the church over the right way to handle the pandemic. And fifth, leading staff while navigating public health information that was constantly changing. And I have to tell you, I went through all of these myself. I mean, I scrambled for us to do Zoom in counseling. But it is nowhere near the capacity that y'all handled, and I respect the difficulties that you have. But what exactly is burnout? So in an article dated June 2016, World Psychiatry defines burnout as a psychological syndrome emerging as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stressors on the job. Psychological syndrome emerging as a prolonged response to chronic interpersonal stressors on the job. So it's psychological, it is prolonged, and it is interpersonal, chronic. The three key dimensions of burnout were an overwhelming exhaustion, feelings of cynicism and detachment from the job, a sense of ineffectiveness, and a lack of accomplishment. The term burnout was coined in 1970 by a psychologist named Friedenberg, who was American. He used to describe the consequences of severe stress and high ideals. So it's stress and high ideals. So it's exhaustion and feeling like you're not doing a good job. So, and I can be as exhausted as I'll get out if I feel like what I'm doing is good. But when you feel all these other struggles that are happening within our ministries and within your pastorates, it is difficult. There's a Maslach burnout inventory, MBI, that measures burnout, and if you're interested, you can look it up. It's MASLACH. You can look it up, and it's an inventory that kind of will gauge where you are and give you feedback on it. This one is emotional exhaustion, measures feeling of being emotionally overextended and exhausted by one's work. Second one is depersonalization, measures an unfeeling and impersonal response towards recipients of one's care. So, unfeeling, impersonal response to those that you care for. Third one is personal accomplishment. Pardon me. This measures the feelings of competence and successful achievement in your work. It's a whole lot like this other one that we were talking about, but I give you that one because you can actually go on and do an inventory and kind of gauge yourself to see where you are and to see if you should get help. Certain symptoms typical to burnout also occur in depression. In burnout, most of the problems are work-related. So if you take a sabbatical for a month because of burnout, you come back, you're gonna feel better. If you take a sabbatical for a month because of depression, depression's gonna come back with you. Burnout is strictly work-related, and sabbaticals help. People in burnout don't always suffer from depression, but burnout might increase the risk of going into depression if you're not careful. So I want to give you some of the symptoms of depression. The DSM-5-TR, which is a lot of letters for the Diagnostic Manual for Mental Illness, tells us these are the symptoms. The individual must be experiencing 5 or more of these symptoms during the 2-week period, the same 2-week period, and at least one of those symptoms has to be depressed mood or a loss of interest or pleasure. So there's 8. I'm going to read them for you, but 2 of them have to be there. You either have to be depressed, you be in a depressed mood for 2 weeks, or you have to have a loss of interest or pleasure in things you used to enjoy for a period of 2 weeks. So the third one is significant weight loss, even when you're not dieting, or weight gain, or a decrease in appetite, decrease or increase. The fourth one is a slowing down of thoughts and reductions of physical movement observable by others. There's a good way for you to, if you don't think you're depressed, there's a good way for you, there's something you can do. You can have somebody take a picture when you don't know your picture's being taken, and your face will have flat affect, which means you will not, you'll be flat. You won't show emotion, either good or bad. So this is what this is talking about, observable by others, slowing down of thought and reduction of physical movements, and somebody can verify that that's happening to you, or your wife may tell you. Fifth one is fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. Sixth one is feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. Next one is diminished ability to think or concentrate. This is also indecisiveness nearly every day. And then recurrent thoughts of death, recurrent suicide ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan of committing suicide. And here I want to add that if you hear somebody, or if you yourself have these thoughts, it would be easier to die than to keep on living. That to me is suicide ideation, because you are focusing on death and not on living. Depression can begin long before you're aware of it. Persistent depression disorder, which is called dysthymia. Persistent depressive disorder, dysthymia. It is a continuous, long-term, chronic form of depression. You may lose interest in normal activities, feel hopeless, lack productivity, and have low self-esteem and an overall feeling of inadequacy. This one is not as severe as major depression, but it is kind of like a low-grade fever. It is a low-grade depression that follows you. These feelings last for years and may significantly interfere with your relationships, with school, with work, and with daily activities, and I would add, it hinders emotional growth. I feel like I went through dysthymia as a child. My dad died when I was 4. We were at the time, my mother and he were living in Chicago, so mother moved us from Chicago to Edinburgh so she could go to Pan American College at the time. And she took a job with Sacred Heart Catholic School, which is where she enrolled us, so that she could pay for some of the tuition. And then she took a part-time job with the school system so that she could do her student teaching. So she is going to the college, she is working at the parochial school, and she is working to become a teacher. When we lost my dad, my brother and I lost my mom as well. So I feel I have suffered with dysthymia and sometimes still do, but the Lord is healing. If you have persistent depressive disorder, you may find it hard to be upbeat even on happy occasions. You may be described as having a gloomy personality. You are constantly complaining. That wasn't me. I wasn't. Gloomy personality maybe, but not complaining. Incapable of having fun. To persistent depressive disorder is not as severe as depression. Your current depressed mood may be mild, moderate, or severe. When we see a client who reports depression, my instructions always include seeing a primary care physician. Because depression can mimic, thyroid can mimic depression. Thyroid issues have to be looked at. So if you're feeling some of this, a thyroid check would be good. I ask them if they're taking medication that might list depression or anxiety as a symptom, or if they've changed medication, because medications can also do this. My husband got severe anxiety over Benadryl. And as long as he was taking it, somebody happened to notice that it caused anxiety and he stopped it and it went away. So there are other things that can cause anxiety and depression. Depression saps energy, however, even a little bit of activity can help stop the cycle. Starting small, some is better than none. Some of these things are exercise, socialization, start a hobby, keep up with your responsibilities, and keep up personal care. This is the easiest to do, the last one, keeping up your personal care. In fact, that's one of the things that I really recommended during COVID. Take a shower, get dressed, pretend like you're going somewhere, even if you're not. And it's the benefits surpass the effort, it's key. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, I can't exercise, I can't socialize, I can't start a hobby, and you can keep up with your responsibilities in your personal care, there's an indication that something, you need to see somebody, you need to see a doctor. Okay, I'm gonna move to anxiety. Proverbs 12:25 tells us that anxiety in the heart leads to depression. They're brother and sister, depression and anxiety. Most of the times a client can't tell me, which one went first. What is certain is that anxiety is not a choice. And if we think it's an option, then we're going to create anxiety. Anxiety is a fact of life, and it can be good and it can be bad. It can be toxic, it can be good. Research done by Yerkes and Dodson shows that moderate anxiety is generally best. If you have very low anxiety, you're probably not going to get off the couch. And if you have very high anxiety, then it's toxic. Then it needs to be looked at. Anxiety that is toxic leads to brokenness, a feeling of being overwhelmed, and consequently, performance goes down. We can judge our anxiety by asking, is this anxiety causing me to grow, or is it creating brokenness? And if you have children, because there's a lot of children, there's an up increase in children that are having anxiety. If you have children that are having anxiety, you need to think about whether it is something that is helping them or hindering them, because it can be toxic. Anxiety comes from internal sources, our thoughts, our own thoughts, and our feelings, or external sources, people. People are most important to God. We must work with both the internal and the external if we're going to grow spiritually. Otherwise, we're separating the process from God and attempting to manage our anxiety without looking at the truth. While anxiety symptoms vary from person to person, in general, the body reacts in a very specific way to anxiety. When you feel you feel anxious, your body goes on high alert, looking for possible danger and activating your fight or flight response. That's something you hear a lot in regard to anxiety. Fight or flight comes up. That's why it can be good or it can be bad. As a result, here are some common symptoms of anxiety. Nervousness, restlessness, being tense. Feelings of danger, panic, or dread. Rapid heart rate. Rapid breathing or hyperventilation. Increased or heavy sweating. Trembling or muscle twitching. Difficulty focusing or thinking clearly about anything other than the thing that you're anxious about. Insomnia, digestive or gastrointestinal problems. A strong desire to avoid the things that trigger your anxiety, like public speaking. Performing certain behaviors repeatedly. So this is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's in the family of anxiety. Anxiety surrounding a particular life event or experience that has occurred in the past is especially indicative of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which is also in the anxiety family. Anybody brave enough to tell me they've had a panic attack? A panic attack is a sudden onset of fear or distress that peaks in minutes and involves experiencing at least 4 of the following symptoms: palpitations, sweating, shaking or trembling, feeling shortness of breath or smothering, chest pains or tightness, nausea or gastrointestinal problems, dizziness, lightheadedness, and feeling faint, feeling cold or feeling hot, numbness. You want to speak up?
When you first asked the question, I said, well, I don't even know if I had, but you're naming all those things. That's
That's
a
why
common
I'm here.
occurrence.
Wait, what is your name? I'll wait.
I felt a little uncomfortable sitting, like, wow. Did you read my notes or something?
Here's I haven't finished my symptoms, but here's the thing with panic attacks. If you can tell yourself they'll last 10 minutes, it's an increase and then it comes down. That way you don't feel like you're dying.
If it's still going on after 10 minutes, call 911.
What's your name, sir?
My name's Rudy.
Rudy.
Yes.
I'm Eva. All right. Numbness or tingling sensations, feeling detached from oneself or reality. This is known as depersonalization or derealization. Now, on this one, I have to tell you that, okay, so you're in a room, and you know you're in the room, but you feel like you're not in the room. That's pretty serious. I mean, when we're getting to that point, then you do need to see a medical professional and maybe help through counseling. Fear of going crazy or losing control, and fear of dying. There are some symptoms of anxiety that can happen in conditions other than anxiety disorders. This is usually the case with panic attacks. So they're saying that you can have a panic attack without having generalized anxiety disorder. This is the symptoms of panic attacks are similar to those of heart disease, thyroid problems, breathing disorders, and other illnesses. So here's the things you can do, Rudy.
I don't think that's in your notes.
So here's the thing you can do. So the one I like the most is control your breathing, what John was talking about. So obviously he has them too. Control your breathing. And this is how you control your breathing. You inhale slowly and deeply through your nose. You keep your shoulders relaxed. Try to keep your whole body relaxed. You hold them for a few seconds. Hold the breath for a few seconds. And then you exhale through the mouth. Kind of cupping the mouth but releasing the jaw. And you repeat it about 10 times. I like to have my watch on because I can tell if I'm taking the pulse when it's actually working. So 10 times is a good number. And you have to learn to you have to learn how to start this so that it's not out of control by the time you start. You have to start kind of at the onset when you're feeling it. If this one doesn't appeal to you, the one I gave you, which is really simple, there's one that a lot of people like. It's called 478 breathing, and it's found on healthline.com, healthline.com, and you can also load apps on your phones, because I looked at that to see if that was a possibility. The second thing is learn how to bring your attention to now, because the future hasn't happened, and the past is over. And now, you're in the best possible company, the company of God, because God is in what is at the moment. There's also a practical intervention with ice, Rudy. So, according to Susan Albers, psychologist of Cleveland Clinic, making contact with ice cubes during a panic attack is considered a grounding exercise. A grounding exercise is something that changes sensation, like it's I've never done this, wouldn't do this, but when you go into the sea and the water is very cold, all you can think about is the cold. So you're moving your mind from the panic to the cold. So the ice in your mouth helps with that. A grounding exercise is something that changes your sensation and brings a new sense of mindfulness, adding that ice triggers a reaction in the body, so it does something else. This is like a jolt to the system that steers it away from the panic response and releases chemicals into the body that counter the panic attack by slowing down the release of cortisol and adrenaline. So that one's very effective as well. In our counseling, we don't treat the depression or the anxiety, we treat the person. Often underlying chronic patterns of losses are explored in the therapeutic process. A few examples. Loss of attachment. We all need to be loved by those we are dependent on as babies and children. It's a God-given need to be connected. If that ability to connect is missing, our tendency is to detach to protect ourselves. And this can result in a low, mild, chronic depression with limited range of emotionality. And this is the one that I was talking to you about, dysthymia. And it was not until I began to study these things that I realized what was happening in my life. The loss of connection that was not there through my mother's fault, because she was trying to make a living. It was still a lack of connection. So it doesn't matter whose fault it is or if it's, neglect. It is still there. Second one is loss of freedom, the ability to say no to the bad and yes to the good. A person has not been free to protest, disagree, or have a voice. And this would be the case in physical, verbal, or sexual abuse. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your abuse, it can be abuse that you have seen or that you have experienced in your household. And then the last one is loss of a loved one. Losses must be grieved. Grief is created by God. It is God's solution to losses, pardon me, that were never a part of his perfect created order. God must be included in the grieving process if there is to be complete healing. Psalm 23 tells us that God is with us in our grief. In a grief share video, Larry Crabb, who passed away in 2021, I believe, he says, I've got some really close friends, and I've got a good community, and I've got a couple of friends that know me very, very profoundly. Every time I have a conversation with them, there's a part of me that's disappointed because there's a part of me they can't touch. And when I go to community, a friend, a spouse, the pastor, somehow expecting them to do what only God can do, I'm going to walk away irritated, disillusioned, disappointed, frustrated. And wait for it. John, you want to help me?
That's why I use an iPad.
Yeah, get your finger wet.
Giving up on what can happen in community, because wonderful things can happen in community, but not everything. God has to be included in these processes. When we experience feelings like those shared by Larry Crabb, we are tempted to keep our losses to ourselves and so push down the resulting emotions and consequently the healing. So the process has to happen, the grieving process has to happen. So I'm gonna move from the stuff that is a little bit depressing and move into work-life balance. So one of the things that pastors tell me is they have trouble leaving work at work when they come home. In creating a work-life balance, boundaries are necessary. Physical boundaries, mental boundaries, emotional boundaries. I like a picture that I have of this in my brain. We have a sliding glass for my receptionist. She is my assistant. She's suffering with cancer, so you know we're make sure that nobody goes into the office. But there are people that will stick their head into the sliding glass area and look down at their computer. That's a violation of a boundary. Healthy boundaries define expectations and show respect for others. Now this is Henry Cloud in his book, Boundaries, When to Say Yes, How to Say No, to Take Control of Your Life. And he's got this to say: boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and somebody else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom. Taking responsibility for my life opens up many different options. Boundaries help us keep the good in and the bad out. Setting boundaries inevitably involves taking responsibility for your choices. You are the one who makes them. You're the one who must live with their consequences. And you are the one who will be keeping yourself from making the choices that you can be happy with. We must own our own thoughts and clarify distorted thinking. A necessary beginning in assessing your personal boundaries is this. These boundaries stem from your values and your life priorities. They're your boundaries. Aside from work, you have a home life, you have relationships, you have passions, and you have your personal space, your own personal physical space. In your assessment, consider this: your limits. What's working and what isn't? So what I'm asking you to do is, in beginning to set up your boundaries so that you can have a good work-life balance, I want you to assess your limits. What is working at the office and what is not working? What is working at home and what is not working? Pay attention to your feelings. I know you're guys, but the feelings have to come into this. The emotions have to come into this. Consider both environments, work, home. Seek wise counsel. Include God. Create a clear, solid structure. And I'm talking, write it down if you can, because that's going to be the best. And then give yourself permission to set the boundaries. Communication is key. As you start to communicate your boundaries, you're going to find people aren't always going to welcome them. And that's normal. Some people are not aware that they're constantly crossing your boundaries, like the guy that's going through our window. Others will usually push against your limits, especially if these boundaries haven't been set up beforehand. So we can safely say that if you're beginning to do this, you haven't already done it. So it's going to be a retraining with the people and the relationships that surround you. And building boundaries is not an overnight process. Your boundaries will be more easily respected if you respect the boundaries of others. And this is a really good book for y'all to read. Delegating at work is an example of boundary at work. Think about, what was I hired to do? You know, what was I hired to do? Look at your job description. Second one is, do you have time to complete another work without compromising the main functions of your job? So do you have time to add something else and still be a good pastor? It's one of the reasons that we started this was so pastors wouldn't be counselors, because that's not your job. And then the last part is, when you're thinking about delegating, can I give someone on my team the opportunity to grow by completing that which I'm considering delegating? So it's also considering the growth of the other person that you're working with. So saying no is another one. And no one can tell you when it's appropriate for you to say no, because you have your life and you have people that you respond to. However, when you say yes immediately, you hinder the possibility of considering your boundaries. And the confidence comes in considering the boundaries beforehand so that the outcome is already looked at. Actually take your allotted time off. Technology helps. What's your name, sir? Technology helps you to communicate that, and you can even tell, your email can pop up and say, I'm not here. You can contact so-and-so for it. I'm a friend who ends every email with, I will respond to emails sent to this account during office hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And that lets me know I'm not to send her an email after 5 o'clock, and if I do, I can expect not to get a response. And I respect that, because that is a boundary. Okay, so transitional rituals. Are we getting time? Because I can jump.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, and I'm gonna skip this one. Okay. No, I'm not gonna skip this.
Take your 5 minutes and use them however you want.
It was y'all's fault. A transitional ritual is a sequence set of mental and physical actions that signal and support a change in the mental state. So what I'm talking about here is I'm leaving work, I'm going home.
So say that, what was it called again?
Transitional ritual.
Transitional ritual.
Sequence set of mental and physical actions that signal and support a change in mental state. And they help you shift. Transition is necessary because in our world today, we're never fully off and we're never fully on. Agree?
Yeah.
So, when I started my counseling, I was in the Valley and I was in supervision as an intern, and I had trouble leaving my clients at the office. In fact, I was taking a shower and I realized my clients were in the shower with me, not physically, but in my mind. The next morning I went to him, and during my supervision we talked, and he said, this is what I do, Eva. He wasn't surprised, didn't miss a beat, so I guess it's something he went through as well. He explained that he would go to the bathroom before leaving the office, he'd run a bit of water, and then he'd wash his hands. He continued to say that he'd pray as he did this, so that he could leave his clients there. And I like the thought of the water, the running the water a bit, because it's the living water. So this is what I do. My Father, these are your people. I have them for an hour. You hold their whole lives in your hands. You know them better than I do. You know them better than they know themselves. I give them back to you. When the time comes that I see them again for an hour, give me wisdom. Amen. So that has helped for me, and I don't always have to do it anymore because it's something that I can do now. But here are some things. I need more than 5 minutes.
Well, I can give you 4. 4 minutes, and then we got to close it up.
Okay. Put your phone down, turn off your computer, notice your breath, consciously shifting your mindset from optimizing productivity to optimizing presence. When you arrive at home, change into clothing that's more comfortable. Take a different route if the expressway makes you nervous. Listen to music, turn off the talk shows. Go to the backyard first, water some plants if you're a gardener before you go into the house. Now obviously you have to communicate these things to the people in the house. Otherwise they're gonna come to the back with you. They have no boundaries. Volunteer, I like this one. Volunteer to make a stop at the grocery store. It helps at home and it signals a change of focus. Walk the dog, engage in positive conversation. Don't talk about work, and this one is a whole nother presentation. Pick up your favorite takeout. Whatever you do, stick to it. Okay? Questions on that? No questions. We only have 3 minutes. Okay. About 8 years ago, I bought my husband a baseball passport. My husband loves baseball, and I find it rather boring, especially on television. This is better when you're there because you can watch other people. I still don't love the pace of baseball, but I love my husband, so I thought I should learn to love what he loves. The passport is a leather-bound, anybody know what the passport is? It's a leather-bound book with sheets for each stadium in the United States and one in Canada. There are 30 teams, and to date, we've only visited 19. Notice I said only. This year, he was very excited about Aaron Judge. Anybody know Aaron Judge?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he was really excited. Late in the season, Judge was close to exceeding the home run record for Roger Maris. It was my idea to catch the New York team on vacation in September, and we were there on September 11th. Despite my good intentions, Judge did not hit a home run. So again, my idea, we headed to the Texas Rangers game against the Yankees in October, and Judge did not exceed the record. So we're packed up and we're moving out of the parking lot, and we decide to argue. My idea. We were both sure we were right. Neither of us could get away because we were traveling. And as the argument escalates, we choose a lull. I tearfully began to list the losses in my life, beginning with the loss of my father at age 4. As I continue, I'm so full of emotion, and I begin to think, how else can I say this to him? And the Holy Spirit says to me, he cannot understand. In that instant, the tension in my body, the angst, and the clenching that I was doing was released. So it was the Spirit speaking and my body responding. And I felt understood. I felt God understood my experiences, and therefore he understood me. The air seemed thick, and the presence was full, and I received a healing for my dysthymia that I had never felt before. I felt safe, I relented, and I apologized to my husband for trying to get him to understand something he couldn't understand. Ironically, he said, you should use that in your presentation. So I think he was advocating for you guys. Notice the Spirit's wording. He will not understand. He did not say he cannot understand. We're born broken. And life adds to that brokenness. Some at our own hands and some at the hands of others. When I married my husband, I offered him a broken woman, and he offered me a broken man. And we didn't know it, but that was the reality. That brokenness created more wounds, and whenever, I want you to hear this, whenever we enter any relationship, even ministry, we're encountering brokenness. And we have to be sure that that brokenness isn't at your own hand. Add to that this. We have an incredible ability to deceive ourselves. Agreed? In a book called I Told Me So, Self-Deception in the Christian Life, Greg Ten Elshoff says, in self-deception, I am both the deceiver and the deceived. I am deceiving myself if I'm managing my beliefs with no regard for the truth. I'm trying to manage my beliefs, but I'm not trying to move myself towards true beliefs. So my challenge, respectfully, is that you take these words, that you take these symptoms, and that you make sure that what is happening in your current environment is not from your own hand, and that you make sure that the brokenness that you're bringing into ministry or into relationships with your members is looked at. Because that way you can be assured, personally, that you're not contributing to some of what's happening. Do I have 1 more minute to say something?
Go ahead.
So, while I was doing this, Robbie,
Yeah, you stay close to the
can
mic.
you stand over there?
Oh, I'm gonna sit down. How about if I sit down? It's a boundary.
While I was doing this, at the end of all of this, I thought to myself, about you.
Oh, goodness.
Welcome to the hot
What's your
seat.
name, sir? And I thought, you are a pastor to the pastors. I get all your emails, and I hear the caring. And I want y'all to realize that because he is creating an environment for y'all that is fertile for healing and health. The oasis, the free counseling, the prayer requests that he does, the facilitating of advertising, you know, the way he helps y'all get people, you know, to come alongside you and new employment. And I believe God wanted me to tell you that. So you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me in for who you are. And I didn't know you were an accountant.
I was just like you. I was an accountant before God roped me into all of this. By the way, Eva, we know how much you enjoyed this experience of public speaking. So thank you. A couple of benefits here. One, that was a lot of content. You may have heard something that, hey, that's something I need to explore a little further.
Rudy did.
Yeah, we did on your schedule put an appointment for Rudy and for Matt. But but really, take advantage of the resource you have there for yourself personally. If there's some area of this that you need to go explore a little bit more, the resource is there and the help is there through the association as well. Also, utilize the counseling center for your church members. When you realize someone needs the kind of professional and longer-term counseling you're not trained to provide, you don't have the time to provide, you've got a great resource, and the association will help you take advantage of that. So
Robert,
help you do it.
Yeah,
John, real quick.
sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's you don't want to provide. I mean, I hate to say that as a
No,
pastor,
I
but
understand.
I've got guys in my church that, you know, they would take up every moment if I gave them, and they're not listening to me anyway. And so I tell people now, I'll counsel with you 2 or 3 times. And after that, I'm going to give you to people who will really see you well and do well with you. And listen, we've had a lot of marriages come back, and they're still together, doing well. So I would tell you, sometimes it's not you can't, or you know, you're not qualified. Whatever. Sometimes it's just, man, I don't have time. They're not listening to me anyway. My kids don't listen to me. I send them to other parents. And so the same thing's true in church.
My final advertisement for the counseling center and for Eva is this. One time, since I've been here, since 2008, one time in all of these years and all of the referrals, one time the message got back to me that something that would not be consistent with our common beliefs as Baptist Christians was reported to me as having been communicated during a counseling session. One call to Eva, that problem was resolved quickly. They're extremely serious about making sure that all of their professional counseling is done within the biblical worldview that we all understand. So I really appreciate that. All right, one final expression of appreciation. Dennis, I'm going to give this to you. Many, maybe all of the folks here have signed it. We just wanted to say thank you to you and Calvary for being our hosts. Next year off, but I'm not making any promises beyond that. Hey, thanks for being here, folks. Have a great day.